Alrighty, what's up guys, single player Nacho here. And those breathing noises, definitely not something you ever want to hear. These are the noises, the deadly, silent air intake of the Regenerators. Easily the scariest B.O.Ws in Resident Evil 4. And as you already know, Regenerators have a near invincible power of regenerating any lost limb. That would be awesome if they weren't bloodthirsty, drooling monsters. They seem to have this insatiable bloodlust, not just for nutrition, but for their predatory instincts as well. Worse yet, Regenerators have creepy, demonic cousins, known as Iron Maidens. When an enemy is named after a historically shamed torture device, you just gotta run away and hope for the best. In this episode of Mysteries, we'll attempt to answer the following on the Regenerators and Iron Maidens. The main takeaway here is the Plaga, that deadly ancient octopusy virus that overtakes the host's motor and mental skills. But the Plaga by itself, a parasite that was dug in for centuries, isn't much without a strong 7'3" host. The single most interesting thing about the Plaga is that it is only as powerful as its host is. So if you give it a random Spanish villager, it's going to keep saying, "Te voy a hacer picadillo." Or if you give it a horny-ass cultist, it's going to say, "Quiero su cabeza." You gotta ask, what the hell was its host? What or who did Los Illuminados use to conjure up such terrifying carnivores? There are two candidates, a disgusting sack of mystery or your everyday cultist lying on a gurney. The sack, possibly the most mysterious enemy and definitely the most passive, can be found at the end of the game, where there just so happens to be one lone Regenerator that seems to have woken up or hatched. The mystery flabby bag is a wonder in itself, with either Leon or Ada not knowing what the hell to make of it, and it stands out as never having a proper explanation. But there are other meat sacks found in the prison cell. One even has its entrails popping out. Now I do believe that the sacks actually served as Regenerator food, knowing damn well nobody in their right minds would want to hand feed these things. The Regenerator in question was most likely placed in a prison cell as a safety precaution. But could the meat sack actually point towards Regenerator origins? Are we looking at the meat cocktail that makes up Regenerators? Well, that's a lot of meat references. And then there's the awful scene of a cultist seemingly frozen during a Regenerator/Plaga procedure. All the signs point towards this is how Regenerators are made, through Illuminados cultists who are most likely submissive enough to undergo the procedure. The biggest piece of evidence being, this is the first encounter with a Regenerator. There are large canisters of ungodly chemicals being pumped in and out of this lab, which I'd like to think act as growth hormones pumped into horny cultists. The Plaga is then added to a steroid-enhanced cultist, and then boom, Regenerator. The procedure itself must have been ugly and not easy at all, which gives way to the freezer. Here you'll find various failed Regenerator experiments. There's so many you can name them individually. I like to use dwarf names like Dopey, Grumpy, and Sleepy. This scene didn't really need to happen. Capcom could have just thrown a Regenerator in there and that's it. But to actually see the failed ones, it sends the message that Regenerators are hard to develop, need precious temperatures to keep them cooking, and they probably smell horrendous, which leads us to our next mystery. Osmond Sadler, the game's main antagonist, is so ambitious to the world's destruction, he'd go to the depths of hell to procure the most powerful enemies, from Gigantes to Verdugos, to Salazar's hand. It makes sense why Regenerators were made in the first place. And it's not just because they're tall and scary. Regenerators answer a giant problem within the Plaga: light. Flash grenades are an absolute menace to Sadler's entire plan of world domination. One perfectly placed emo hair toss, and it's over. Of course, temperature is Regenerator's main weakness, but with further developments, there is a bigger problem: Iron Maidens. Now, to my surprise, Iron Maidens aren't a single entity or a separate one. These things are Regenerators that have evolved, similar to the evolution of zombies to Crimson Heads. We're looking at Regenerators that have trophies full of victims, and it's such a wonder to me that spikes and twitching are the next step in Regenerator evolution. The first Iron Maiden is found in a more advanced lab than that of its lesser counterpart, meaning even more experiments were conducted on it. Lots of test embryos can also be found, which is more of a biologist's job and not some random YouTuber, and whiteboards with lots of notes and equations. I'd like to enhance this sequence to see if there are any hidden Easter eggs, but whoever wrote this must be about 4 years old. And now for the biggest mystery yet. Putting psychology into a quiet, lurking video game monster, it's always fun. But that's the thing, Regenerators and Iron Maidens must be quiet for a reason. Think about where they are placed in the game. Of course, from a mechanics standpoint, they're placed in corridors and areas that make them difficult to run from. But from an actual functioning skill, their silence is a great tool to show off their top position in the food chain. Keep in mind, these are mindless, violent monsters, at least on the surface. I think the closest animal we can compare Regenerators to are snakes. Yes, snakes for their stealth and deadliness. I'm not saying you can't spot one from a mile away. You hear that pedophile breathing and it's time to turn back. But look at the way they almost chant for themselves after beating you helplessly down to the ground. That noise is so disturbing. It's almost like these things pat themselves on the back for killing or wounding things. The question is the noise a point of self-pride, or does it show its loyalty to Los Illuminados? Can these creatures even grasp the concept of Sadler's ultimate plan of world domination? Regenerators and Iron Maidens can think, I think, because they can process what their victims are going through. They see the wounds and the screams and the blood, which brings us back to that disturbing breathing noise. Keep in mind, the noise is accompanied by an evil, sinister grin. These things may be so demented, they may be in fact laughing to themselves until their next victim arrives. Definitely a mystery that may never be revealed. Well, thank you so much for checking out this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to comment down below your thoughts and opinions on the mysteries of the Regenerators. What did you think when you first saw them? And did they meet your expectations on how they looked, depending on how their breathing sounded? Comment down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more horror videos, lists, and mysteries. Again, guys, thank you all so much for the support. Have an awesome rest of your day, and as always, stay single.